Alright. Let's do this. Hi, Misha here, and to say things have not gone to plan lately would be an understatement. The last time, or just about the last time we went to the range, we had the incident where the camera SD card died, and we lost nearly all of our range footage. There was that one clip from our Polish FB Archer 01, imported long ago now by IO. So we salvaged the one clip. The reason we were recording this gun then was to compare it to the, at the time, brand new Arsenal Sam 5. We'll have to redo that video since nearly all that footage is gone. Since that time, of course, the Mini Beryl, or as it's really just marked, the FB-M1 pistol, has come out. And through a few unfortunate events due to bad email addresses, some people changing positions, and everyone being busy, and then the weather, we were not able to get our hands on this one until recently. By which time, of course, there were already a couple of videos out. And I was thinking, well, what can we say? What can we do to give this, our own distinct twist? And in the beginning, I was just going to do a short video, kind of a preview. Yeah, that didn't last. So with that, since these have been around for a couple of weeks now, I wanted to address some issues, such as the rear trunnion, the barrel, and the sight base. But first, because it's almost like I contractually have to do it, let's talk about the history and what led up to the Mini Beryl, the KBK WZ 96. I needed the Tantal out for something later with the Mini, so might as well start with the history here. And again, we've talked about this in multiple videos, so this is kind of going to be a lightning round. Really, in the 1970s, Poland was using 7.62x39, was getting away from the older mill guns, was making the AKM, AKMS, and they were really focusing on grenade launching, underbarrel devices, but later they would decide to kind of go back to a muzzle launch device. And they started working on something to fire 5.45x39 around 1979, with the earliest prototypes of what would become the Tantal available in 1981. But due to labor and political reasons, the project was halted. It would not be until 1988, after trials and testing, that it was officially adopted as the KBK or KBS WZ-88 Tantal. Tantal being the project name named for the element, but it would be retained for the rifle. Now, the reason they didn't just adopt the 74 is as well known. There was licensing and costs associated with Russia, so they did their own thing here. They kept the 16-inch barrel, but they had this long muzzle device, flash hider, brake, grenade launcher. That's quite unique. It has a ring for the bipod. Notice the front sight and the gas block are closer together. On our handguard, we have a unique takedown system with a lever. On the side, flip over real quick. Right here, that's pretty unique for what it is. That was for allowing quick attachment of devices. Moving back, we have a three-way selector. We have full auto, burst, and semi. And then the safety was again on this side, the standard So the left side was just safety. Oh, and then we had a rib top cover, although some of them had the smooth. We had a manual latch here in the back to retain the top cover for grenade launching. And we had a side folding stock fitted into a standard rear trunnion as standard. So the Tantal was all ready to go into action, as was its little companion known as the WZ-89 Onyx. But then communism fell. To kind of continue supporting ZM, Luxnick, Circle 11 Radom, they went ahead and ordered 25,000 of the WZ-88 rifles, but they never really ordered any Onyxes, at least outside of the trials guns. So these were being brought into service 1990, 1991, but they were already looking to the future and were pretty much obsolete the moment they went into service. But the development with the Tantal would be carried on to the Beryl series. And that really does get us to the Beryl project. Now, the earliest work at Circle 11 Radom on a 5.56 rechambering of the Tantal would be the WZ-90 and the WZ-91, which were commercially available for export by 93, but the military had its own specifications that we'll get into. In 95, you would have one final run of AKMS guns in 7.62x39, and you would have one small run, around 150, WZ-89 Onyx carbines. That I think was mostly just to use up existing parts, and, why not? But at the end of that year, the first samples of the Beryl were delivered. First, they were tested by Radom, then they were delivered to the military for testing throughout 96. Into 97, we had a couple of batches of both the full-size and the compact Beryls. They passed trials, they passed testing, they met all the specifications, and they were adopted. The rifle would be the KBS WZ-96 Beryl, and it is Beryl because it's based on the element beryllium. And at the same time, the KBK WZ-96 Mini Beryl was adopted. So they came together. In the rear, they were very much the same stamped receiver, side selector from the Tantal. One innovation, one thing they really wanted in the military was a good way to mount optics, which would result in the POPC system, the optics system. They also had to be the same basic length as the preceding Tantal, so they would fit in existing racks and in inventory and vehicles. But that did allow, because we're going to a smaller device with the rifle, a longer 18-inch barrel. This is right at 18 inches, cold hammer forged, chrome lined, with a 1-in-9 twist. And it takes the same bipod clip-on style as the Tantal, and it has the same style of handguard retainer as the Tantal. And early on, we would have the folding stock. And now, in past videos, we've detailed all of the changes. For example, some early ones, they added the second arm to the selector. They also added a larger mag catch, extended shelf safety. They would change the furniture. And they would go through at least 4 generations of the POPC rail system. So you can check out our older videos if you're interested in that. Now to our Mini. The major difference is we go from the 18-inch barrel to a 9.3-inch barrel. To be exact, 235 millimeters. To make this work, we have a combination front sight gas block We have a shortened gas system with shorter handguards. Different retaining system. It's a push pin instead of the lever. We had a different rail system. We'll talk about that in detail in just a minute. Same basic top cover. And the same 3-rivet rear. The 3rd rivet was added for launching rifle grenades, just to kind of keep that secure. And even the Mini could launch rifle grenades. It had this kind of somewhat crank style device with a cutout for a grenade ring. It also acted as a bit of a muzzle compensator in addition to being a flush hider. So yeah, the first major purchase order was about 8,000 of these. The earliest Mini Beryls were kind of tested by the frogmen of the Polish Navy. Later they would get more widespread use throughout the army, and a few years later they would be used by Polish police. The WZ-96 guns first saw action in Afghanistan in 2002, and then the next year, 2003, they would go over to Iraq. And that would inspire quite a few updates and changes based on real-world soldier feedback, which would kind of have this whole series. We would start off with the WZ-96A, quickly go to the B, and this would quickly switch to the C. There was even an effort to do a D model, but mostly they stuck with the C, which is what we have here, beginning around 2009, 2010. So there are variations and differences. And already by this time, there are more of these in the Polish military. They had 45,000 by 2011. There were subsequent orders in 2015 and 2016. And as of last year, they had about 80,500 Beryl and Mini Beryl still in active military service, with over 100,000 of these produced in total, although some would go to other entities like the police, and some would just be retired out or lost, damaged in kind of combat zones. So it makes sense through attrition and just things wearing out. So there you have a brief history. And of course, it must be commented that the MSBS, or the Grot, started to kind of replace the Beryl beginning in 2018, although this was initially just with the border guards. It really wasn't until 2019, 2020 that the regular army started to mess around with the Grot. But because they have so many Beryls in inventory, they're not going to be retiring them completely any year soon. Polish Archer. Fox. So what about our semi-autos? Of course, IO was the importer of the Archer 01. They quite famously brought over 700, give or take. Selling these back around 2012 through 2014 mainline with some kind of sales and just, getting really into the inventory around 2015. Ironically, people weren't all that interested in them back then. It wasn't until they dried up that prices went bananas online. And the reason they did, these are the only FB-Radom rifles ever imported. Circle 11, the original factory, filed for bankruptcy around 1999. Went through some major restructuring. Between 2001 and 2003, assets were virtually transferred, including the Beryl production, to a new entity, FB-Radom, which really was just reclaiming its pre-communist and pre-World War II identity. It was still in the same place, same town, and as you can tell, they got back to work, not just producing the Beryl, but improving it. And of course, this gun has been modified by me over the years. As you know, I replaced the IO butchered safety with an original standard one. Gave it the right pistol grip. It has the modern 4-position telescoping stock. Let me set you down. There, you know the deal. This has the modern BOP4 rail, which is Picatinny. Clamps on in the back and the front. Standard iron sights. Has the 18-inch barrel. I never have bothered to cut my bayonet lugs out. I have no idea why. Well, I do know why. I was lazy, but they could have done it. They chose not to. This is the muzzle device. It's correct for all intents and purposes. Even put the grenade spring on it years ago. Great gun. One of my favorites. What can you say? Even IO couldn't mess that one up. Well, the Mini Beryl. This took forever and a day to come in, but such is life. After IO, and then the thing that was Radom USA that never really did anything except import a few samples, Arms of America, at that time in Colorado, got the exclusive with FB-Radom with a lot of input from Atlantic Firearms. Well, now Arms of America has changed hands a bit and has relocated to Texas. And they're importing these finally after 4 years of hard work. And things are looking up. Since the MSBS, the GROT, is finally underway, since pretty much all existing Beryl contracts are fulfilled for militaries, and with a little bit of change up in the directing and oversight and ownership even of FB-Radom over in Poland, the attitude is quite positive, where they're very interested in doing business in America. So let's see how that goes. Unlike the IO, which came in as a rifle, so it had to comply with all the sporting regs, including the magwell being single stack, the pistols can come in with standard double stack compatible magwells. You can tell because of the dimple up front here. They have unmolested safeties, original Polish receivers, original Polish barrels. Oh, flipping it over. We have the XY stamps here. Now, these do not have the fire mode selector on the left side, which on the IO gun is purely cosmetic. Neat to be sure, but cosmetic. It doesn't do anything. And of the 700 that came in, only the last 150 to maybe 200 had the left side selector and the 3 rivet rear. These are called Generation 3. Generation 1 archers had a 16-inch barrel. Generation 2 went to the correct 18-inch with the small device. And Generation 3 had these added little features that no one seems to really have recognized they were there, including maybe IO. I don't know. But it was kind of neat they slipped in with those on, but it's kind of a why situation. And so I'm in no way, shape, form surprised that the pistols do not have those. But everything else is here. We have the front sling swivel on both sides. Oops, sorry. We have the correct ventilated upper handguard. Now you cannot import a pistol or even have a pistol with a foregrip, so it's not surprising that they have a kind of simple, polymer lower. They do have the modern ergonomic grip, modern large safety. They have a nice Polish trigger. I was actually commenting to Jay today that I'm quite partial to this trigger. It's a military trigger, to be sure, but a very nice one. anyone who's ever fired like a milled arsenal, it's kind of like that. It is a wide hook, not one of the real skinny ones, so that's nice. And it is what it is. So, there are kind of 3 question mark areas about this gun. One, people are kind of concerned, not liking the rear here, the sling bar. 2, we have the way they did the rear sight, this 1913 rail Picatinny system with backup irons. And 3, the muzzle device and barrel. So let's talk about those in reverse order, starting with the barrel and muzzle. As imported to comply with import regulations that do not really allow exposed threads, what they did, and you probably already know this, they installed an extra long detent pin and no spring. So I've already replaced mine with a spring and pin. I actually borrowed one out of a Arsenal base. Underneath we have 24mm threads, which is kind of interesting because not many Polish guns use this thread pattern. Here's our muzzle device. Like I said, it does have a slot for a ring on the front. It does have some ports, 4 of them it looks like. It is a true conical inside, not a bored out one. So the device is correct. Now, it has been commented upon that the barrel is extended here. This is apparently not correct. First off, this is not just an extended barrel. Let me flip around here and try to point at you. Well, maybe. Hard to do. Sometimes I really do miss Jay. If you see here, it's a 2-piece design. The base is extended out here, and the barrel is extended out underneath that. Why did they do that? Well, the answer is kind of in our Tantal over here. That's why I said I wanted it out in the first place. Went ahead and loosened this up because they're a little tight. Unscrew this muzzle device. This is interestingly on 14mm threads. And notice the threads are way back here at the front sight base. But notice the barrel protrudes further. 16-inch barrel. It sticks into the muzzle device about that much, right up until this bump here. Right up really to the chamber. Why did they do that? Grenade launching. Rifle grenades. This keeps it a much tighter fit. And notice there's even a ring back here for a tight fit. They did what they could to stabilize this for rifle grenades. And since the Onigs, at least in theory, and the Mini Beryl were meant for rifle grenades too, I'm sure that's why this sticks in quite far to this device for stabilization. Measuring from this to the chamber, it is right at 9.3 inches, exactly where it would be. Every website out there with information on the Mini Beryl lists the barrel at 235 millimeters, and that's exactly what we have here. If we were to cut this down to right here, we would be well under 9 inches, about 8. Original crank length, to be sure, but not apparently original Mini Beryl length. Keep in mind this does have a 1-9 twist. With the 9.3 inch barrel, that gives the bullet a full rotation. If it was below that, at 8 inches or so, it would not have that. Also notice these interesting divots here and this outer sleeve. It just does not seem likely they would make both a new FSB gas block unit with this extension on it and extend the barrel out for these small import run American guns, when actually, when it comes to importation, shorter and lighter work in your favor. So here's the muzzle device back on with spring-loaded detent. Note that the pins are only on the bottom for the combo device. Up here is actually the pin for the detent. What that extension seems to be, it has 2 more pins that very securely hold the FSB to the barrel, again to really strengthen it for grenade launching. So we have a pin up here, a pin down here, and then we have 2 pins back here on the bottom. If we didn't have the pins on the sleeve holding it to the barrel, you would only have these 2 lower pins, which would, you know, hold it, but kind of asymmetrical. And the Polish seem to kind of overdo things for grenade launching, hence the 3 rivet rear, and the fact that they have the spring-loaded release to keep the top cover on, because it was important to them. Moving on to issue number 2 that some perceive, the mount. Now, the Archer, of course, had the style with the slots in the base where it could be detachable. And certainly pictures of Mini Beryls show that as well. And I do have one of those mounts. They're usually called the POPC2. They're about this size, maybe a little shorter actually, and they sit even higher. They're very high. I do have one somewhere. I don't know where I put it. It's in a box somewhere and it's cold, so I don't feel like digging it out. You can Google up pictures if you would like to see them. This piece is actually attached where the rear sight would be. 2 rivets there. And if you look on FB's website, they offer with the standard rear sight, or they offer with a 1913 rail and backup iron sights. And that's what they shipped us. This is a 2-position backup iron sight with both notch and peep. And I think they made the right call from a practical shooting point of view. If you've ever actually messed with the POP2 sight, like I said, it's very tall, and it's not the most secure in the world. It just mounts to those 2 slots and then has 2 screws with 2 small screws acting as capture screws for those. It can work loose, and Americans would have complained. And again, since this is an option for their select fire guns, I think they went with the more modern, the more practical sight base. And the front side is kind of an interesting thick post, square post there. And I think it's neat how they have the push button or pin, and that pin does appear to be captured. I pushed it out and it didn't go all the way out. It stayed. But that's how they hold the short handguards on instead of the latch there. Again, I personally think they made the right call. You may disagree, but it is an authentic option used by some of the military and or police Mini Beryls. And finally, our rear sling bar and pistol trunnion. Box. Good. Hey, look, I found a way to bring the fox into this video after all. Here are the cutouts I was talking about. I've actually put this short rail on this rifle in the past just for fun. And here's the nub in the back there for the full length to lock onto. And this one does have the early style folding buttstock. So what do we have here? Well, some seem a little disappointed by it. I guess it could have been done better, but it is what it is. I'm happy it is a 3 rivet, not a 2. And this bar that seems to be concerning so many people is just kind of there, spot welded on. It's very thin steel, almost like barbed wire thin. I think with a pair of snips you could clip it off extremely easy. You could definitely Dremel it off. With the right tools and setup, you could knock this bad boy off in 10-15 minutes. And then you can drill and tap it for whatever you want. A CNC Warrior, a pick rail, a what have you. So while some may not like that it's there, I actually do like that it does have a functioning sling swivel. I would have preferred they did it a little different way, maybe like you see on some of the Romanian guns or the Arsenal pistols. But I would rather have some type of sling swivel back here than none at all. Because if you're not going to put a brace on it, it's nice to have a sling on these guns, and that would actually be a really good single point sling loop. And it's secure enough, but it's also easy enough to clip off. Guys, they're doing these for the American market, but the Mini Beryl was not made for us originally. This version was made for us, but yeah, not everything is going to be 100% made the way you want. That's just kind of how it is. And I know that $1,300-$1,400 seems like a lot for these, and it would have been a couple of years ago. But these days, the Arsenal pistols, like the Sam7 K34 we showed you a week ago, those are, those are nearly $2,000. Even Romanian Dracos are bringing well over $1,000. So for the quality you get here, and the fact that it's a unique 223 and it's all Polish, you know what? I can put up with a small, like, barbed wire looking, fencing looking piece of steel on the back. Because really, I'm not even going to put up with it at all. One nice thing that Atlantic Firearms was offering with these was this, a rear trunnion. Complete and ready to go. So I'm gonna pop these 3 rivets, pull this pistol plate off. Actually, having this sling loop was gonna make removing this plate even easier. Just grab it and pull it out when you ground the rivets out. And slap this bad boy in. And after I do that, I'm going to install this here buttstock that I bought a few years back from RTG. Not really knowing why, just figuring one day I'd be glad I did. It's been on my WBP Fox here for a while. It's at home. I had this one as the early handguards on it. And the US made Beryl looking muzzle device. But now this will go to home on the Mini Beryl pistol when it's SBR'd. Because even though the adjustable 4-position collapsing stock is technically standard on the newest Mini Beryls, I'd asked Jay, and I've just kind of asked around, and it seems like most people still prefer this stock because it gives them quite a bit smaller of a package, and it's a little bit lighter and slimmer overall. So that is my plan. And I'm really happy that they did offer these trunnions. These are brand new parts, they're not from kits, and they're actually true Mini Beryl rear trunnions. Not just Beryl. How can you tell? Well, it doesn't have the stud here for the full-length POPC rail system. Because for the minis, they still like to go with the short rail, be it this style or the original short style. They don't typically do that. And I'm not saying there aren't some, because again, FB-Radom has made several flavors and variations of these. But we're just kind of talking generalities. So yeah, that's kind of my take on the 3 points and features of this critter. And let's do a quick partial disassembly. Why not? Here's our barrel here. You can see that the pin, and this comes back here and then pins down there. This gas tube pulls right off if you need to. Interestingly, it has a very smooth finish to it. Again, this rail isn't removable without tools, as in a grinder. Here's our insides. Single hook trigger, but it is a nice one. Nothing spectacular. Very, very AK internals. It's a pretty light gun. It's under 7 pounds even with the rail. A little over 6.5. Overall length of the pistol is about 20 inches, give or take. So quite nice. Looking at the parts here, our top cover at first might seem standard. There are a few changes. For one, there's this dished out area here where it dimples out. On the military gun, that serves as a stop for the left side selector. And actually over here, the ejection port, about 20 years ago, was enlarged slightly to improve reliability using some feedback from soldiers in Afghanistan and Iraq. So it's not your average cover. And finish on this seems to be the usual alternation of both paint and phosphate. The recoil spring I was hopeful for, and I was really happy they have the modern spring-loaded, or as they call it, automatic lock. I was really hopeful they would do this, and they didn't disappoint. The previous Archer just had a standard, and before that, in the earliest guns, they used the manual lock style like this, as seen on the Tantal, and even the AKM and AK-47 WZ-60 they did. So I was really happy they did that. Here is a bolt carrier comparison. This is from the WBP because it was closer to hand. But you can see the carriers are the same length. But the gas piston, not the same length at all. I also find it interesting that the head is tapered and has the step up. That would be so it can better interface with the gas block and form a tighter seal for initial pressure. The carrier appears to be phosphated. Very nice machining. Stem bolt. Interestingly, a floating firing pin, not spring-loaded. Most of your modern arsenals are spring-loaded, but for military ammo, it's not an issue. And again, these were designed for militaries, primarily. The trip was machined off for semi-auto importation, but otherwise, this appears to be an authentic mil-spec bolt group. And notice we have not fired it yet because the weather has been abysmal here. First, lots of rain in January, and then the deep freeze cold of February, and snow. And once that melts, snow will turn to ice, and ice will turn to mud, meaning we will not be able to get out to the range probably for a while yet. Which is why I went ahead and decided to do this video instead of continuing to wait for our range day, which we really wanted to do. But to be fair, this is going to run fine. I have confidence in FB-Radom, also Atlantic, and Arms of America, to be fair. Comes with one standard modern translucent greenish mag. Originally, they used the black mags, borrowed from the Tantal. They just changed them up a bit for the cartridge, 5.56 by 45. Black gave way to clear, kind of translucent, pretty clear, a little bit smoky, around 2008, 2009, but they had some cracking problems with those. So they very soon switched to the greenish translucent, which are a little more opaque. And these are really good mags. You know, they only have polymer, no metal up here. They're lightweight and durable. Jay and I both have owned Archers for coming up on a decade now, not quite yet a decade, and we've never had a magazine failure. And Archers are not guns we keep in the safes. We do shoot them. So yeah, there's your internals of the Mini Beryl. The only real name on it is M1. As Jay joked, well, that's good, they picked a name that no one will confuse with any other gun whatsoever. Archer. Fucks. And here we are back together with the Archer and Mini Beryl, kind of showing you length comparisons. It's pretty dramatic. Quite a bit shorter, and if you have the folding stock versus the adjustable on, even more so. The Mini Beryl, like I said, is just a Mini Beryl M1 as the name. 223. Of course, it is 5.56 by 45 NATO. A lot of guns get marked 223 just to make them kosher for importation. And again, on this side, we have the newer Arms of America, Garland, Texas, instead of the older Cripple Creek, Colorado. A lot of parts are serialized on this gun, including the internals. And like I said, I really do believe that the barrel is correct because of the length and the fact that two of the pin supports are up here. I really think it's neat how they just put in a long retaining pin as opposed to actually pinning it, drilling and pinning, or spot welding. Because you have to do something, or something like this just can't be removed. So it fulfills the letter of the law, but is extremely cheap and easy to reverse. I had mine done in 10 minutes. As far as this, like I said, I think they made the right call with the top rail. Here's the notch iron sight that hangs back here. So you have a reasonably long pick rail. It's hollow in the center for using the sights and also to save weight. You use a bullet tip. Bullets once a few cents are now about as expensive as an actual sight tool. There's a spring-loaded plunger here. You press it in to get it flipped up, and then that gives you back your peep. And then there's a different hole you use to push it down up here. So it's actually two different holes, but that's just because you're actuating the spring detent there. Like so. Sorry for getting close to you there. And of course, because it is a pistol, 922R, need not apply. Less said about that silliness, the better. It is a good feeling gun. The finish is very nice. Unlike, say, an Arsenal, it's nice, even, tough finish. Nice trigger. Everything fits nice and tight. Top cover. There's a little bit of play in the lower handguard, but it's spring-loaded, so yeah, the handguard retainer is very tight. The muzzle device fits fine. There's a little bit of side-to-side and a tiny bit of up-down play, but nothing there. The front sight is nicely centered. So yeah, the only real complaint one can give would be having this piece of wire on the back as a sling loop. I mean, I think we all would have loved it if it had a standard rear trunnion, but again, you have to comply with the ATF import regs, and they're pretty strict when it comes to AK pistols. Just ask FB-Radom USA, Ted Marshall. That was kind of the deal. They have their standards. They don't have to make sense. We don't have to agree with them, but we do have to follow them if we want imports. So, just how it is. Originally, these were going to be $1,150, maybe $1,200. Turns out they're about $1,350, $1,400. Part of this is just the simple exchange rate. The dollar is weaker now than it was a year and a half ago. And part of it is just the overall situation we're in. Like I said, Arms of America has had some change-ups. And just sometimes overall costs are greater than expected. But everything's higher now. Even not just retail pricing, but even dealer pricing. JDI Swiss guns went up a bit. Arsenals have definitely gone up several times this past year. And we all know about Colts and other ARs. And of course Wassers, and all of those have gone up too. I don't like it any more than you do, but it's just the world we live in. But on the other hand, it's here at least, and just look at what archers have been going for, the rifle version, and that was through IO, who could have done a better job. The underlying FB gun is great, but the way IO cut out the mag well, or rather lack thereof, wasn't. And the fact that they didn't machine out the bayonet lug and accessory lug. Why? Just laziness. They pretty much have done everything they can here. One more thing I wanted to show you, just in case it's a point. Hold tight, folks. That's funny, I just had hands on one. It is amazing how stuff that was once at the top of a pile can immediately float to the bottom. Oh well, I'll just open up another bag and try it that way. I wanted to show you an arsenal mag. Here's a modern 223. And let's see if it will fit. Now, in principle, they're very similar, but typically the arsenals can be a little tight. Now, I could probably force this, but it's just a little off. And the main reason has to do with these locking tabs. The Arsenal is just beefier because it has steel here versus the Radom. And in the back we have much the same situation with the rear lugs. Arsenal is just a little thicker, and even the lips are a little bit thicker on the Arsenal mag because they are steel reinforced. So it's good that an Arsenal mag is, you know, built very tough, but they don't want to fit in a Beryl type. You can make them fit by a little bit of light sanding to the magazine, never the gun. But you see the factory mags pop right in, no problem. They're just a little bit thinner. Interestingly, Beryl mags will fit in an Arsenal and work just fine. They might be just a little wiggly loose, but otherwise, yeah. So as you know, Jay and I are big fans of the Beryl series. And this is exactly what a mini Beryl pistol should be. If you SBR it, you can put on a side foaming stock, put on one of the early kind of style foregrips, and you'll have a neat little commando type gun, 9 1/4 inch barrel, give or take, in 5.56 NATO that is actually military grade with the quality and reliability we just kind of expect from FB-Radom. Again, apologies about not having range footage, but it just hasn't worked out. And to be fair, with the cost of ammo, yeah, I'm not exactly losing sleep over it. Yeah, it's a bad ammo situation, really worse than guns. Look at it this way, the current rates, this gun probably only cost about 1 case of ammo. So there's that. Well, I think I've covered the issues and questions people have had about it, but if I missed anything, post it below, and we'll try to answer it. Or if we can't answer it right now, we'll get to it when we get out to the range with this critter. And also, once we pop the rivets, file the SBR paperwork, get the stamp back, and install the rear trunnion. And if this wasn't enough Beryl talk, again, we've done past videos on the Archer and the Tantal, and Jay just put up a recent video on his Polish collection, so check those videos out if you'd like any more Pole content. With that, this is Misha. If you could, please like, share, subscribe. If you'd like to help support us, please check out the link to our Patreon page. And on behalf of Jay, we will both catch you very soon next time.